welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna make something that we've made very similar version of before. However, this one comes with a pattern and it's a little different. Today, we're gonna make the baseball pouch. So the baseball pouch is just like the CuteHeart pouch or the Magical Mouse pouch, which we have featured on the channel before. It is a pattern by OklaRoots, that's me. And it's done the exact same way. However, it's just a little bit different when it comes to measurements and stuff. And this was directly inspired because we're going into baseball season and our family has kind of become baseball obsessed over here. And so I wanted something fun to bring with me to all the baseball games we're going to. So this is a really simple pouch if you haven't seen this design before. It is one zipper, just like 3 panels, a lining optional if you want it, add it. If you don't have to. I will show you how to do the lining today. And then with one zipper, you have 2 pockets. So you see you have one zipper going right down the center like this. However, when you fold it like this and snap it shut, or don't put the snap on, again, that is optional, you have 2 pockets. And you can see I always have a Sharpie in here because, like I said, we go to baseball games and Newton likes to get things signed. So we have 2 pockets, 1 zipper, a little wristlet. We are gonna go over this adorable wristlet. And you can see on the wristlet, we have this fun like little zigzag stitching to kind of give it like a baseball feel. This is an applique project, meaning that you can cut out this applique design here. I know that it's kind of a thick looking stitch for the baseball. So if you open this up, you'll see. It's supposed to look like a baseball and it's a bit thick, but I wanted to make it as easy as possible for all skill levels to be able to stitch this down. When you grab the pattern does have all the templates you need to do this. And there is a second template that is a more skinny stitch. So if you feel a little bit more comfortable doing a thinner, stitch look over here, then you can definitely use that one. The pattern does come with full written instructions, so it's not just printables. It has the full written instructions. It also comes with the printables for everything you need to make this, and then it also comes with SVG files, and those would be used with a Cricut or a Silhouette, some sort of a cutting machine, like the one behind me over here, if you wanted to use your cutting machine to cut out all the panels for you, so that way you don't have to trace and cut by hand. However, I will tell you personally, I have traced and cut by hand every single one of these I've made. I've made like half a dozen so far. It is very easy to do and it looks very cute. You don't have to be super precise with anything. And as always, there is a template set available if you're interested in acrylic templates, if you're gonna be using those a lot. And I'm gonna show you how we use the template set and also how we use the printables in today's tutorial. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout outs, anything at all, please leave them down in the comment section. If you haven't checked out the CuteHeart and Magical Mouse tutorial or downloadable printables, I'll have links for those down below. Those ones don't at this time, the debut of this video at this time, they don't have full written instructions that go with them, but they will. So full written instructions are coming out for all of the OklaRoots patterns. It's just taking a little bit of time. But I know that a lot of people have been really happy with having a downloadable pattern that they can either print out or just keep on their computer when they don't need the video tutorial, but they do still need a few of the instructions. For these types of center zip, fold over, snap, pouches that we do, I do suggest you use raw edge material, meaning material that can be left with a raw edge. So this is just a vinyl, same with the applique, it's a vinyl. The back is like a faux suede, but also fine, doesn't fray. For the lining, I use a water-resistant canvas, and it does do fine. And if you would like to edge coat the edges of this, meaning that like paint that kind of is like a thick layer, almost like rubber, and it completely covers all the raw edges, you can definitely do that. I'm a big fan of that. I haven't done it for these ones yet, but I do plan to go back and add edge coating to all of my little baseball pouches. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, so for this little baseball pouch, you need about a fat quarter of exterior material and a fat quarter of lining material. Now you can mix this up a lot. I encourage you to do so. I like to have one color for the front panels, one color for the stitching accent, and then something else for the back. You can really get creative with this. Essentially, it's just a circle. So if there's other designs you want to use with this, you can. I've already had a lot of people ask about soccer balls, tennis balls, things like that. So you can have a lot of fun with it. But this pattern specifically was designed to look like a baseball. So I'll be using a combination of 3 different colors today. I know these are not baseball colors because traditionally I've been using white and red. However, my son is on a baseball team and these are like the colors for his baseball team this summer. So I wanted to try it with some brighter colors so we can try it out and see how it looks. So if you have a favorite baseball team or your child plays baseball, maybe we can try using their colors. We'll see. I'll test it out. We'll see how it looks. For the exterior, you really want raw edge material. Think vinyl, cork. Clear vinyl is great too. It needs to be something that can be left raw edge because we're not enclosing the seams with anything. For the lining, it also needs to be raw edge appropriate, but you can use like a water resistant canvas. I would not use a quilt cotton anywhere. If you want, you can use heat transfer vinyl and then just adhere the heat transfer vinyl to the backside of your exterior material, and then you don't have to use a lining at all. I do like the water resistant canvas lining, but it isn't necessary. And you will need about a fat quarter of your lining material as well as your exterior material. All right, so here's the hardware I'm going to use today. First, I have a piece of zipper. Now, this is a zipper that is a number 5 zipper. It is zipper tape, meaning it does not have stops on the beginning and the end. We don't want any stops. And it is about 9.5 inches or longer. We're going to trim it down to size once we fix it a little bit, but 9.5 inches or longer to start with, and it has a number 5 zipper pull already on it. Next, I have my fashion snaps. You could also use plastic snaps here if you'd like, but these are just going to be the snaps that I put on the sides of the pouch to let it snap together. If you want to keep it flat and you know you're never going to fold it and need it snapped together, then you can just bypass these. You don't need them. And then these other 3 pieces here are going to be used for a strap. So first I have a rivet, and then I have this little, I don't even remember what this is called. I'll have a link for them down below though, but I love these things so much. It's kind of like a little itty bitty D-ring that you rivet in place. So that means you don't have to get a piece of fabric and wrap it around the D-ring and sew it in place. That is an option if you want to do that. This is my favorite way to add just like a little D-ring to these pouches. And then today we're also going to make a fun little wristlet strap using my favorite little clamps here. This is a size 1 inch, but you could use any size, and I'll give you some instructions on how to change the measurements of your material based on that. Okay, so here's pretty much all the other stuff I'll be using today. First, let's talk about the thread. I'm actually using a pretty thick thread. This is from Size Swag. This is a Tex 70 weight thread. This is really made for industrial sewing machines, but I find it actually works really well on my domestic. I need to make sure I use the right needle. So for my needle, I'm using a Microtex 9014 needle, so it's a little bit thicker. And then in my bobbin, I'm just using, again, a Gutermann thread. I do like the thick stitching of the thick thread, especially for something like this baseball pouch. Then I have some double-sided tape and temporary adhesive. This is 505 spray. This is just to kind of hold the back panel lining and exteriors together. Optional, and if you're not using a lining, then you don't need to use the 505 spray at all. I have a small pair of snips, as always, for my threads, a 1 inch by 6 inch ruler. I have my rivet press. This is the die set for the fashion snaps, so the metal snaps I'll be using. And then I have a die set over here for the rivet, a hole punch to go with the rivet press. You're going to want some good scissors if you're cutting out the applique design by hand, so really good fabric scissors that are nice and sharp. You could also use your Cricut for this or your Silhouette. There is an SVG file included, so if you want to use that to cut out the pieces instead, it'll be a lot quicker. My marking tools of choice are always an air erasing marker and this little silver ink vinyl pen, and then of course my OklaRoots bag tag. Okay, so I'm still working on the pattern pieces, so if it doesn't look exactly like this, it should at least look very similar, but this is pretty much what it should look like if you're printing it out. You're gonna have one piece here that's a half a circle. For the most part, it's half of a circle. You're going to use this to create your front panels and also your back panel. I do have the applique design on here, mostly so that you can mark placement points so that it's easier for you to build your panels, and I will discuss that with you. Next, you'll have the stitching applique. So this is the one I like to use. It's nice and chunky, it's easy to cut out, it's easy to sew on. However, if you want it to be a little bit more authentic looking, there is the thinner design as well. This is going to be harder to cut out, so if you're using a Cricut or something like that, you might find that easier, and it's going to be a little bit harder to stitch, but I think it'll have a really cute look as well. Another option, as always, is our template set. So this is an acrylic template set, and it comes in a set of 2. It has the half circle, and then it has the applique design, and it just fits inside just like that. So this makes it pretty easy to trace out placement. I'm going to be using this in the tutorial today, but I'll also show you how to use the paper template as well. All right, so let's start with the exterior front panels. Biggest piece of advice when it comes to the applique is do not mirror them. They need to be traced out the same. So by mirroring, a lot of times we'll cut one out like this and the other one out like this. That's not the look we're going for. If you did that, when you put these 2 panels together, you're gonna have something like this. And that is, again, not the look. The stitching needs to go in opposite directions. So when we build this, we want it to end up like this, meaning we build them identical. So we're gonna pretty much sew these exactly the same. We're gonna have 2 identical half circles so that once they're all appliqued on like this and we turn it, the stitching will go in opposite directions. That's the look we want. So I just want to make sure you get that because I have made that mistake multiple times with my own pattern. So I have 2 cuts of my applique. Again, they are the same. And then I have 2 cuts of my exterior main panel. If you're using a print with a direction, then you do want to mirror it, okay? So if you have a directional print, make sure you do mirror your circles so that it's all in the same direction. If you are choosing to use heat transfer vinyl as the quote-unquote lining, what you do is just flip this over and use these exact same pieces and then heat press on your heat transfer vinyl onto the back of these, and then you're done. You don't have to use lining at all. The other pieces of vinyl I'll be using is 1 cut for the back panel. So the back panel is made by taking your template and tracing around it and then flipping it over on the line here, flipping it and tracing the other half of it to create mostly a circle. You'll notice if you really closely look at it, there are a couple of flat spots. It's not a total circle. It's not supposed to be, but it's mostly a circle. And then I have a cut of vinyl that is 2 inches wide by 12 inches long. Now this is for my wristlet strap. Here's the thing. The hardware that I'm using for this wristlet strap is 1 inch wide. So however wide this clasp is here that you're using, you need to cut a piece of vinyl that is twice as wide. So if this was 1 1/4 inch wide, this material right here would be 2 1/2 inches wide. If this was 1 1/2 inch wide hardware, my material would be 3 inches wide. It's very important that this piece here is vinyl if you're gonna do it the way I'm showing you. Again, the stitching technique we're using does require your machine to have a zigzag stitch, so if you only have a straight stitch, this might not be what you wanna do, and we have a whole tutorial going over how to do lots of fun wristlet straps, so you can go check that out and do a different one. But for today's one, we want it to be a vinyl cut, twice as wide as our clamp hardware over here, and sewn using a machine that has a zigzag stitch. And then finally, I have a small cut of vinyl that is 1 inch by 2 inches wide. This is for the zipper end. And the last bits of material, if you choose to use them, are the lining cuts. Again, I would stay away from anything that frays. So I'm using water-resistant canvas, and you're gonna have back cut that is used as a full circle, and then 2 of your front panel cuts. All right, so the first thing we wanna do is applique on our little accent pieces. And so double-sided tape is going to be your friend here. When we applique this on, we're pretty much just sewing it on using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So if you don't wanna sew over your tape, just make sure your tape is running right along the center of your applique, and that should help. And you can use as much or as little tape as you feel comfortable with. If you have a vinyl that is going to move around a lot or that you're kind of worried about appliquing on, I would suggest putting the tape on all the little appendages as well as down the center. If you have a stiffer piece of vinyl, because some vinyl can be very thick, very stiff, then you probably don't need to put them on the little appendages here. Those will probably stay fine on their own, but we don't want this moving around. So I'm just gonna add double-sided tape to the entire backside. Okay, once you have the tape on there, now we need to mark placement. So like I said, remember, we're pretty much just building 2 identical panels. So just lay them both facing the same direction like this. First one I'm gonna show you is using the template. So I'm going to lay the template right side up on my material that is right side up. And then I'm just gonna grab any sort of a fabric marking tool. It could be my silver ink pen or this air erasing marker. And I'm pretty much just gonna go around and I'm just marking in the little nubs. So you could trace out the entire design if you want, but I'm just gonna do the nubs because that's really all the place I need to know where they are. So there we go. I have that, and now I can take my applique design, and you see I know exactly where it needs to go, easy peasy. So all I have to do now is remove the tape and stick this down. I forgot to mention using a stiletto in the beginning of the video, but this is also a very helpful tool, especially when it comes to applique, where you'll see I use it a lot at the sewing machine to just kind of hold the material down right before I sew over it. So if you're not using the acrylic template and you're using the paper template, you can still do the same thing. What I do instead is I grab a stiletto and I'm gonna mark a dot on the tip of each of my little nubs. Now, if you prefer to mark a dot like in the corners, you can, or you can just mark a hole in the top and the bottom of the applique. Pretty much I'm just wanting to keep it nice and simple so that I can easily find placement for my applique. There we go. So I have little holes punched on the ends of each little nub. So I'm gonna lay this again. My pattern piece is right side up. My material is right side up. I'm gonna grab my fabric marking tool and I'm just going to push it through the holes that I punched or that I poked, just like this. Now, don't get caught up on everything being perfect. It's okay if it's a little not perfect. So I don't know if you can see, but now I just have these little dots all over the place, which is all I need. Because once again, I can take my applique, line up the nubs with each dot, and it's exactly where it needs to be. So this can be as involved or as simple as you'd like it to be. Alrighty, so once these are taped down and they're not going anywhere, or glued down, you could glue them if you'd like to, we're gonna take these to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch slowly and carefully around the outer edge of all of the appendages and everything at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do like to tie off the ends, meaning when I start, I have a long top thread and a long bobbin thread, and I keep them long, stitch around the entire design. When I come back to that beginning end point, I'm going to cut the threads so that the ending threads are also very long, pull all the threads to the back and tie them in 3 knots. I'm gonna do this for both of these panels. My suggestion, if you have a silicone foot, if you're using sticky vinyl, make sure you put your silicone foot on there. You don't want your presser foot pushing your material or sticking to it. Just go very slow, use your stiletto. I'm gonna be using red thread here so that we can see it really well, but honestly, I wish I was using white thread or even black thread. So if you're not so sure your applique stitching is going to look great, use the same color thread as the applique design. So I know I speed that up in the video, but I will tell you, it takes me 5 minutes to do one of these. That's how slow I go. So the slower the better. And I used a zipper foot, which was great. So now I'm just going to pull these bottom threads, these bobbin threads on the back side so that I can see my top thread. I'm just gonna pull the top thread to the back. So then all 4 threads should be on the back side now, and I'm just going to separate them 2 and 2, and I'm going to triple knot these nice and tight. And then I'm just gonna cut off the excess threads, and there we go. How stinking cute is that? I love it. The red thread was good. I was worried the red thread might look a little weird, but it's good. So I'm gonna repeat that with the other front panel. So you see now when you flip these over, they go in opposite directions like a baseball. So now I'm gonna add my bag tag. If you don't wanna add it to the front because it might take away something, don't add it. I wouldn't add it too close to the straight edge of the center because that will be sewn onto a zipper. I like to add it kind of in the little corner over here. However, you do wanna remember that you still have little fashion snaps there. So I would just make sure you take one of your templates and make sure your tag isn't gonna interfere with the snap. The snap is pretty close to the edge, so you should be okay. So I'm just going to put some tape on the back of my bag tag and take the paper off. And I'm just gonna kind of eyeball this and center it, mostly. That's mostly good. And I'm gonna go top stitch around my bag tag, also at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and tie off the threads just like I did with the applique. Okay, your 2 front panels are now ready to go. Let's prepare the zipper. All right, so grab your zipper, and you'll notice that with your zipper on, when you open it, half of it opens, and when you close it, the other part closes behind it. We're working on the open side here. So before you open this up, what we wanna do is we wanna measure 3/4 of an inch down from the raw edge on both sides. Just use some sort of fabric marker and mark right on the edge, 3/4 of an inch down, just like that. Sometimes I like to even put it over it like that. And then open the zipper on that open side. I also forgot to mention clover clips. I forgot to mention all kinds of things, but these plastic clover clips are what I use in bag making all the time. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take our zipper end on the raw edge, zipper right side up, and we're going to just pinch the zipper back. Just pinch right on that 3/4 of an inch mark. And as you pinch it, you'll notice the zipper coils, the teeth start to rotate away from the center of the zipper. That's what we want. And then with that pinched material, we're just gonna fold it down over that turnover and use a clip to hold that in place. So when you look at this, it's nice and clean on the front. It goes at a 90-degree angle away from the center of the zipper, and it's just like a nice little folded straight bit on the top. If you look on the back, you have a 45-degree angle fold, so it's like a diagonal fold going from the corner straight to the teeth. We're gonna do that on the other side as well. So once again, just pinching right at that mark. Zipper coils go away from the center. and then add a clip to hold that in place. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna just base stitch right along the edge of our zipper tape over those teeth that are going away to hold this in place just like this. Okay, so you'll see once you have that stitch in place, when you go to close your zipper, it stops. It doesn't go off the edge, which is exactly what we want. Now, grab a ruler and take your zipper. I like to lay my zipper on top of it, just like this. And we're gonna measure underneath the zipper 8.5 inches. So I'm just gonna lay my zipper on top of my ruler, and here's my 8.5 inch mark over here. So I see 8.5 inches. This is just how I do it. You measure this however you want. If you're using a cutting mat, use that. But then I'm gonna mark down here on the end where the zipper is overhanging, and then I'm gonna grab my scissors and I'm going to cut off that bit of overhang because we want the zipper now to be 8.5 inches long. So however you're comfortable trimming it down to 8.5 inches long, just get it there. So now I'm gonna grab my lighter and I'm going to just melt all the raw edges of my zipper tape because you can tell it likes to fray. We don't wanna deal with that. There we go. Now once your zipper is done, grab your zipper tab on the wrong side of it, mark a midpoint going along the long side, and then I just fold this like that. So you can add tape here if you'd like, it's not necessary, but what we're gonna do is we're pretty much just going to hug this around the edge. So it should be quite a bit wider than the zipper tape. So like I said, if you wanna use tape here, like double-sided tape to hold this in place, go ahead and do that. I find just folding it and clipping it works fine for me. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch right along the inner raw edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this in place. If you wanna backstitch right at the end of the zipper on each side of the raw zipper edge, go ahead and do that. Once you have that sewn on, trim down that tab so that it's the same width as your zipper tape. There we go. And if you're wondering why did we cut it so that it was wider than the zipper tape, why didn't we just start with a cut this size? It's because it's hard to sew that down when it's the same size. That's why, because it's just easier to sew it on and make it look nice with it being wider and then cutting it down. The thing about with sewing, it's a lot like that. It's easier to clean up a mess than it is to just be perfect the first time around. It's easier to be a little sloppy and then clean it up, make it look perfect versus just being perfect right off the bat. So now you have your zipper and your 2 front exterior panels, and also grab your 2 front lining panels. And on the zipper, we're gonna fold the zipper in half and we're gonna mark the midpoint. So just end to end, just like that. And however you wanna mark this, if you wanna cut it a little bit, you can. Just remember, anytime you cut anywhere on the zipper tape, you need to melt that cut with the lighter. So far I just marked it with a pen, but if you want to be able to see it on both sides easily, you can take your scissors and just snip the teeniest, tiniest little triangle. You see that? But you want to make sure you grab a lighter and melt that, or else it can start to fray. So then grab your 2 front exterior panels, and we want to mark the midpoint along the straight inner edge. So once again, with either a marking tool or scissors. Do this for both of them. And before we get started, get your orientation down. If you have one you want to go on the left and one on the right, lay it out, right side up. Lay your zipper. Your zipper needs to close going up. So the zipper needs to be like this with the tab on the bottom. So lay it out first before you start sewing. And then take your zipper and lay it right side down along either of the panels. I'm going to start with the left panel. And then match up those midpoint marks on the zipper and the front exterior panel, and use your clips to hold these right sides together. Move that zipper pull out of the way. Now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste right along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You'll notice the zipper does not extend all the way to the edge of the material. It's not supposed to, it's supposed to be centered. Once you have the zipper basted on, grab one of your lining panels, if you're using a lining panel, and we're gonna lay the lining panel right side down on the back side of the zipper, matching it up completely with the straight edge of your exterior. Now, if you were not using a lining panel, you would have just sewn this zipper on at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You wouldn't have to baste it on at all. If you did baste it on, you can go back again and do a second row stitching at 3/8 of an inch to sew it in place. But that's only if you're not using a lining. If you are using a lining, then what you want to do now is just clip this with the exterior along that straight edge. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this long clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, once that's sewn on, we're going to press these wrong sides together. This is gonna look so cute. I really love these colors. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add clips along the outer edges And this is just gonna be to help me get this all lined up, because since I'm not using an iron here, it can be a little tricky to get it nice and flat right here by the zipper. And I find that if I make sure all the raw edges are matched up first, I have an easier time getting that spot straight. There we go. So once I have that clipped, I'm gonna kind of tug on the zipper and get this nice and flat. And if you have a seam roller, you can seam roll along this seam right here if you'd like, or you can just press it with your fingers. There we go, that's looking good. So now I'm gonna top stitch right along the seam at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. However, I'm not gonna go all the way to the ends. I'm only gonna top stitch from the end of the zipper over to the end of the tab over here, and I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and the end, because this is a raw edge project, so if we just like left the threads hanging off the edge, they could unravel over time. So I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and the end, just one back stitch at both those spots at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm gonna flip this over and I'm gonna tie them off on the lining side with triple knots like I did on the applique. All right, so one side is done. Now we just have to repeat that with the other side, and I'll walk you through it. So once again, make sure everything is oriented the way you want. Zipper going up, closing. You shouldn't be able to do it any other way. Fold the zipper so that the zipper is right side down on the right side of the other front panel. Line up your midpoints and clip the zipper right sides together with your panel. If you're not using a lining, then you're gonna just sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you are using a lining, then we're gonna baste along this clipped edge at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Once you have that basted in place, grab your lining panel and lay it right side down so it's on the back side of your zipper tape, and line it up with the straight edge of that exterior panel you just basted on and clip together. And now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Once that's sewn in place, flip your lining and your exteriors wrong sides together, just like that. And just like I did before, I'm gonna line up all the raw edges and clip those together first. And you can just leave these clips on because we're gonna need them in the next step anyways. All right, so once I have the raw edges clipped, I can kind of pull on this like this to straighten out the zipper, and then finger press the seam down just like that. And now I'm going to top stitch along this folded seam right here, but only where the zipper tape is, and I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and the end over the zipper tape ends, and I'm gonna pull those threads to the lining side and triple knot them. Alrighty, your front panel is all good. Now let's work on the back panel. So the back panel is pretty simple. Lay your exterior back panel wrong side up and your lining back panel right side up, and line them up just like that. And if you don't feel like you need to spray glue this, then you can just leave it like this. However, I know how clumsy I am. I will end up accidentally folding this in or something like that. So I'm gonna grab my 505 spray and I'm just gonna put some spray glue on the back here. If you wanna use double-sided tape instead, you can do that too. Or you could use some sort of like a webbing adhesive, whatever's easiest for you. I don't need it to be perfect, I just need it to be on there. There we go. So now I'm gonna take my front panel and lay it right side up and line it up with the back panel. Now you probably noticed most likely that your back panel is a little bit bigger than your front panel. This just has to do with seam allowances, bulk of material. The thicker your material, kind of the more tighter the front's gonna be. That's okay. If the front or the back is bigger, that's okay. It's actually preferable if the back is bigger. And if you really want to make sure you have it the way you want it, you could even just kind of willy-nilly cut a big piece of material for the back and then just clip this on. But you do need to be able to clip it on. So you can see I'm just going around clipping the front panel to the back panel that has the lining glued to it. And I already have some clips from whenever I was working on the front panel, so I'm just gonna go around and include the back panel in those clips, which is why I said to just leave them. So I'm going all the way around to hold this all together. All right, so this is what it looks like on the front. Here's what it looks like on the back. We're doing fine. So now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch around the entire circle edge, looking at my front panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna start here on the bottom and I'm gonna make sure I back stitch at the beginning and the end. I also like to back stitch over the seams on each side of the front two panels because as it gets used, I don't want those to rip. Just go slow, take your time. Like I said, if you need to use a silicone foot here, go ahead and do that. Alrighty, once that's stitched on, I'm going to once again pull all the threads to the back and tie them off. But tying off threads makes it look nice, but it's also especially helpful when you're using really thick thread, because thick thread can unravel pretty easily, and we don't want that. So doing the triple knot, giving it a good extra bit of security is helpful. And then whenever you tie off thread that can be seen in the end, if you have like these little pigtails sticking out, you can grab a lighter and very, very gently just melt the ends of those pigtails to tuck them in. There we go. All right, so if you have overhang, like you can see the lining overhanging, that's from the back panel, we're gonna trim that down. We want it to be nice and even, because if you're gonna edge coat this, all of the edges need to match up perfectly. So I'm just going around with my scissors and just tracing the front panel slowly and carefully. How stinking cute is this? So you see when it folds, this is what it looks like. So it's one zipper, and then you open it up and you have two pockets. Isn't that cute? So if you want to just leave it as this, you can. I'm going to continue on and make it into a snapped little wristlet. So once again, I'm going to grab my template, and this can be your paper template or your acrylic template, and I just poked a hole right in the center of that little circle over here, and I'm going to lay this down over my front panel, and the inner edge should pretty much line up straight with the zipper teeth on your zipper tape. So I'm going to take a pen and I'm just going to mark where that dot is, just like that. And I'm going to do one side at a time just to make sure it lines up exactly the way I want. So I'm going to grab my hole punch and I'm going to punch right where that dot is. And once I have that hole there, I'm going to fold this in half and get it exactly the way I want it when it's done. So I'm just going to fold it in half, line up all the edges, keep the zipper nice and straight. There we go. And then I'm going to grab my pen and I'm going to insert it into that hole that I punched so that I get a dot on the back side on the other side. And then I'll use that to punch the hole for the other part of the snap. That way I know that this will line up properly. And if you want to double check, you can grab your template and lay it over and make sure that the hole is in the same spot as the template. But if it's not in the same spot, that's okay, because at least it's going to snap the way you want it to in the end. You know what I mean? Okay, so now I have my fashion snaps. Again, however you choose to install this is great. I think I'm going to install the cap over here where my tag is. So we have like a little flat cap part. That's going to go on the front, just like that. And then its partner is this little donut, and that's going to go on the back of the pouch. So I need to make sure I have the die set for that. So the bottom die is like a little bowl. Top die has like a little tiny nub. And then I'm just going to screw that in. And then I'm going to insert my snap set into my press and just give it a quick press. Nice and easy, so that looks cute. Now I'm going to switch out the dies. So I am using the male dies now. And then I'm going to grab the longer pokey bit, and that's going to go on the right side, just like that. I'm going to flip this over, and then I have the little shorter pokey bit that's going to go right over the long part sticking out on the back side. And then I'm just going to insert this into my rivet press, get it lined up, and press in place. So easy, guys. I love my rivet press. So now when I snap this shut, look how stinking cute that is. Isn't that sweet? Oh, I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to do the wristlet strap. So let's start with the hardware bit that I'm going to install on here. I like the strap to hang from the top, and the top is where the zipper closes. So you don't really want it to hang upside down when your zipper's open, you know, so you want it to hang just like this. And now I'm just going to eyeball where I want my rivet. This is a very small spot, so it's going to be centered between the top panels here over by the open end of the zipper and below the top stitching. I definitely do not want to accidentally punch a hole through that top stitching. So centered and below the top stitching, just like that. And then I'll grab my hole punch and I will punch right through there. Okay, now I'm going to take the rivet with the stem, so the male end, and push that through the front like that. And then I have my little, I can't remember what this is called. I had it for a moment, but it has a pretty side and kind of like what looks like a back side. The back side is gonna go up and go back sides with the back panel, just like that. And then I'm gonna take the female part of my rivet and I'm just gonna snap that on over the back side. So you see, this is how it looks. Now it's all loosey-goosey, and that's not ideal. We want it to stay just like that, which means we have to press it. So I'm gonna grab the die set for my rivet and insert that into my rivet press. And now the big part here is you wanna keep this upright, because if this kind of twists to the side and then you press it, that's how it's gonna stay. So keep it exactly where you want it as you get your rivets kind of settled into the die, and then just press it down. And there you go. How stinking cute is that? Oh my gosh, it's so cute. So if you were gonna edge coat this, I would suggest you probably edge coat before you install this bit over here. Even if you were gonna install this using like a scrap piece of vinyl and a small D-ring, I would still suggest you edge coat all of this first and then add the connector on here. I don't have like just a one-off edge coat video, I don't think, but I know other people who do, so I'll have those linked down below. Okay, so now let's do this super cute strap. I'm once again gonna use my rivet press for this because it's the best way to do it. So this is the die set that I'll use for the rivet press in order to clamp this down. It is the best. If you have, if you don't have rivet press and you want a bunch of dies, I suggest you go look at Cam Snaps. They have an OklaRoots bundle that has all of these. I'm pretty sure all the dies I've showed you are included in it. I have a whole video going over my favorite dies for this press, and those are all in the bundle. So I suggest you go take a look at that if you're interested. But this is the best way, in my opinion, to get this to close, because I've used the hand ones that you clamp over the end here and they never work for me. Maybe for you they do, for me they don't. And then I'm also gonna grab some glue. Now, I am using a sewing machine that has a zigzag stitch, which is important for what I'm gonna show you. If your sewing machine does not have a zigzag function, it's just a straight stitch, you can still do a version of this, but you might have to get a little bit more creative. So on the back side of my wristlet strap, I marked a center line running right along the long part of this. Now I'm gonna grab my double-sided tape and I'm gonna add some double-sided tape, kind of just like a 1/4 inch below that center line. So not right on it, but below it, because I will be stitching close to that line. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the top, about a 1/4 inch above that center line, just adding some tape. And then I'm going to remove the paper. Remember, this is all on the wrong side. And I'm going to fold this back, long side, wrong sides together to meet that middle line and really get the long edge to come up to that middle line. We want this to be as straight as possible because this is actually what we're going to see in the end. Normally this is the side we hide. Not now. This is actually the decorative feature. So we're going to do the same thing on the other long edge, fold it back, and get it to butt up right with the other raw edge of your fabric. There we go. Get it right there. Okay. So you can start with the zigzag first, or you can start with the top stitching along the sides first. I'm going to do the top stitching along the sides first. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges of this strap with the what we normally consider backside. So these raw folded edges here with this side up, because this is actually going to be the right side. So these raw edges are the right side. I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges of this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So this is what it looks like currently. If you have a straight stitch machine, you could definitely just go along both sides of this inner fold right here and do the top stitching. I don't know if it will have the desired look. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go and I'm going to zigzag stitch right over these center raw edges, and that gives it a baseball look. It does. It gives it a baseball stitch look. So I'll put a screenshot up here of the settings that I use on my machine. If you want to make them wider, you can make them wider. If you want to make them kind of more condensed, you can, or more split up. But it's cool. If you want to actually do this by hand and just sew them together by hand with a proper baseball stitch, which is pretty much like a shoelace, it's just like tying shoelaces, or putting shoelaces on a shoe, then that's a cool idea too. This is just something that was fun, so I'm gonna go do my zigzag stitch. All right, so check that out. Isn't that fun? It looks like a baseball stitch. It does to me. Okay, so I did not backstitch at the beginning and the end, but I am going to tie off these threads in little knots. You probably don't even need to. I just like to, again, just to be extra careful. I sewed very slowly with that zigzag stitch using this thick thread because my machine doesn't want to like this thick thread. I feel like I tricked it somehow into letting me use it. because normally my machine would not go for thick thread. Okay, so now all we have to do is put on our piece of hardware. So I'm gonna insert my die set. So you can see there's just 2 flat pieces of metal, and then you just put them in your press like that, and then you just clamp it down. Super easy. But what I'm gonna do first is add some glue. So using my glue, I'm just gonna add some glue to the hardware on both sides, just centered on both sides, a little dollop, glob, whatever. And then we're gonna take our wristlet and we're gonna fold it wrong sides together, just like this. Insert it and center our hardware over it. If you can, pinch it with your hands. Go ahead and do that. Some hardware is harder than others to do that with though. I can give it a little pinch. That way you just don't have to worry about holding it together so much before you get to the rivet press. So there we go, I have that on there. And then I'm just going to insert this in, line it up with the flat metal pieces, kind of hold it down a bit, and then just press it in place, nice and tight. And there you go, perfect. Doesn't come off, look, see, nice, pull it nice and tight. No problem whatsoever. I love this. This is my favorite way to use these pieces of hardware. All right, so now I'm gonna grab my pouch. I'm gonna snap it shut. How cute is that? And then I'm gonna grab my little keychain bit here, and I'm gonna thread it onto my hardware. And there we go. Cute little baseball pouch. Let's open it up. How stinky cute is that? I think it still looks like a baseball. I know the colors are not baseball colors, but I think it still looks like a baseball. And I think, you know, if I make these for the other moms on my son's baseball team, I think they'll love them. And what's fun about this too is I can take Newton's number and I can put like his number. I can take some heat transfer vinyl or like some just even sticky vinyl and put his number on the back of this. I could put his team's name on here. I think this is really cool. I think this is really cool. If you guys are doing any baseball stuff this summer and this gets you excited, I hope that it was fun to make, and I hope it's fun to use. Okay, I know it's not a traditional red and white baseball. It's not supposed to be. I think it turned out really, really cute. So here is the traditional one. Here is Newton's team color one. So this is fun, right? So if you have a sports team, whether it's personal to you or it's a minor, major hometown team, and you want to just have something fun to take to the games, this is a great little thing to whip up. It is so much fun. You can just put your credit card, your ID, the things you need in here, like I said, a Sharpie. You can just put those items in here, put the wristlet on, off you go to the game, and it's just so fun. And I will tell you, I have taken these to local minor league baseball games, and I've gotten a lot of comments about them, specifically from the staff who work there. And so as we go to more and more of these games, I'm starting to see the same staff members over and over again. And so I'm planning on making quite a few of these to gift them, because, I mean, they work at the baseball stadium. I would assume they like baseball. I hope they like baseball. I should probably ask to make sure they like baseball first. But I think these are fun gifts. I mean, I don't know. If you're not into baseball, then you can do whatever you want. And I have had a lot of people ask, like, could you do something like a basketball, a soccer ball? Definitely. You definitely could. I mean, this is just a basic circle. So you can get your own shapes out and just start adding it as you'd like. And if you do that, please make sure you tag me. I would love to see your version of any other sports ball or even anything at all. I mean, you could make it a smiley face. You could do so much stuff with this. It's just a really simple idea that you can build on however you want, which is kind of my favorite type of pattern. So I hope you love making the baseball pouch as much as I do. Like I said, if you make it and you share it on social media, please make sure you tag me. I'm OklaRoots on everything. If you don't have social media and you want to show me, send me an email. I'm Jessica@OklaRoots.com. I love seeing your guys' version. You guys inspire me so much with how creative you get with these and the way you change everything. That's my favorite thing, is to see your take on something that came out of my head. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.